Welcome to the Metal Institute of Thrashology. Thank you for taking the time to sit down with me today.
Do so.
Awesome. So I just got done listening to basically your entire discography about 100 times. So
Thank you.
it's great and it's
Thank
right
you.
up my alley. And I really enjoy, though, to jump right in, I really enjoy the two singles that you just released, Create or Last Laugh and Time's Gone Bad. It seems like you took like a heavier or a thicker approach from Magnasonic,
Mhm.
and I just wanted to know, like, what direction are you guys, trying to take this album to? Like, what's your vision for it when you were writing?
Well, I'll tell you what. A couple of the songs, like "Last Laugh," has been around since pre-pandemic times. And it was one that we wrote when we had a slightly different lineup. So we had another guitar player, like an additional guitar player,
Sure.
when we originally wrote that, and the other guy who was in the band is just a riff monster. This guy Flynn, he's a super guy. I miss him dearly, but he had to stop playing with us because he had a lot of life responsibilities and stuff like that. But he's just a riff monster, just a riff machine. And with two guitars, it sounded sick. It was just enormous. And so that song's been around for a while. So it was just like a variation sort of on things that we were already kind of doing, right? Like we were already writing songs that had riffs in them. Um, when we did Magnasonic, we specifically uh, set out to do a record that kind of, how do I put it? It could be anything, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like a lot of weird layers, a lot of funky shit going on. I can say the S word, right? I'm
You can
sorry. I
say
already
whatever you want. It's America.
shit, piss, fuck.
Oh, yeah.
Uh, uh, but no, when we wrote that record, we set out to do something that was different, like something. We had the songs and we had the structures and stuff like that, but then when we got in the studio, we decided to make. Uh, I just sort of we just had a different approach in that we were like, you know what, if you hear a piano part or a sitar part in your head and you think it goes, let's try it. Let's
Yeah.
see what we get from, let's see what happens. And we haven't like lost that perspective in terms of recording and writing.
Sure.
It's just it changes. And so setting the stage with Magnasonic, with it being sort of like throw the kitchen sink at that thing. Um, that so sometimes Magnasonic is pretty heavy, and then other times it's ethereal and spacey and trippy. And that was our goal, was to make a record that sort of like you didn't know whether to shit or go blind. It's just kind of like like this could be anything, right?
Yeah.
um which left us wide open going forward to do whatever the hell we wanted, because the worst thing that happens is when you come out the gate and and you put out a record that's just balls heavy, right? You write the heaviest freaking record anyone has ever heard. What do you do after that?
Good question.
Right? So what happens then? Like anything that's like not, even if it's still a really heavy record, people are like, first record's heavier. You know what I mean? It was better when he screamed more or whatever. You know what I mean? So our goal with that first one was to say, like, here's a lot of stuff that we do. This is all stuff we like. This is kind of what we're all about, is just kind of like trying stuff. And then as we moved forward, we continued to try stuff. So, you know, uh, the newest record, Little Wars, is, I wouldn't say it's heavier. It's definitely pretty damn diverse. There's a bunch of different kinds of crap in there, and we wanted to get all of the things we liked in there, and so um, part of that obviously is the heavy stuff, and part of it is the trippy stuff. We just kind of blended it a little bit differently this time. I mean, that's sort of our thing, is like whatever we we call it, whatever gets your bird twitching.
Yeah. Hey, it
you
worked. I
know?
tell you what, that first one, the hardest part for me would be I struggle with pigeonholing somebody into a category.
Yep.
The thrash metal, death metal, stoner metal. With your with Magnasonic, it seemed to me that there was so many influences. Anything from like a Muddy Waters to like a Black Sabbath. So I hear a lot of Leslie West in there, and it's just all over the map. So to read reviews that compare you, Hawkwind and Monster Magnet, yeah, I can see that. But it seems to me that you guys are way more diverse, way more astral, way more doom and astral gaze. It's just there's so
Mm.
many different levels of texture throughout that album. So I think you did a wonderful job of not pigeonholing yourself by any means.
Thank you very much.
And then as it moved forward into the three singled release, The Hand of Man, and I don't remember the other two songs titles that are off of that.
It's okay.
It seemed to just flow right into that. And then even though
Hmm.
the song you said is left over from pre-COVID, um, those first two songs that you just released, Last Laugh and Time's Gone Bad, man, are they thick. The guitar riff, I don't know if it's the bass or like the layering of guitars, super thick. And it's just so crunchy. It sounds great. I can't,
Thank you so much.
so I'm really excited to see where this it kind of sucks I have to wait to hear the entire album. But I like the old days where you just put the whole thing out. But
Yeah. Well, things are so different now with the music business that when, you know, it's that sort of whole like delayed gratification thing, right? So like, um, you know, and I mean it all no one knows what the hell's going on anymore in terms of like what's going to work, right? So
right.
like for example, when we put out Magnasonic, we weren't on a label yet. Well, we were about to be on a label. But when we recorded it, we didn't know who was going to put it out. Um, and then our friend Scott Harrington at Salt of the Earth Records was like, I'm not letting you put this record out with anybody else. He's a dear friend.
That's great.
Um, and when we put that record out, like we had no idea what a media plan is supposed to be, right? We didn't know what it was. I guess I had something to prove. I really don't know. And I was like, guys, here's what I want to do for this record. And they were like, what's, and they're always like, what do you want to do with this record?
Sure.
And I was like, let's record promo songs that aren't on the record, but are like the record and make little videos for them and then say the record's coming soon, you know?
Yeah.
And so our drummer was a brilliant video editor as well as a freaking great drummer as well and a super guy. He's one of my favorite people.
Sure.
Mikey. We wrote these little 2.5 minute, 3 minute instrumentals that were all different. Like, I mean, you can find them. We have videos for them on our YouTube page. And you'll get a kick out of them because they're interesting. And they're, so there's one that's just basically we called it Quaalude Thunder, and
Okay.
it's basically one long drum solo with some like twerky guitars over top of it. And then there's another one that's called Gin au jus, which is like gin and juice, but gin au, and it's kind of got like a hip hop part that starts it, but it's all just us playing, things. And there's like this sort of hip hop part and then it switches into like an Isley Brothers rock part, and then it goes back to the hip hop part. So we did that one, and then the last one was called Blue Madras, which is like a sitar guitar solo over like hippie stuff, And the idea with that was just like, a lot of times people are like, oh, you put out a video before the record comes out. Well, I didn't know that. I just thought it would be cool to put out these promo songs, and we didn't have a PR company or anything like that. So we just sort of like threw these things out into the void and told people that we were doing this. And, I sent some emails as like, hey, here's what we're doing. And people kind of picked up on it. So that was, how we promoted that record. And then when we did Hand of Man, literally within the first month that it came out, again on Salt of the Earth Records, COVID hit. And so any momentum we had going up until that point, right in the toilet. Because like we couldn't practice, we couldn't play shows, we didn't have like a budget to like,
Right.
you know, push this down people's throats. So I feel kind of bad for Hand of Man that it kind of, I don't feel like it got some good recognition, but it didn't, we couldn't like tour behind it. We couldn't do shows behind it. So
Sure.
that poor record is unfortunately, I mean, I think that 3-song record is really good, but it didn't get, we weren't able to give it what we wanted, even though we paid for PR and everything like that. Um, we weren't able to give it, the what have you. And now with this one, I feel like we've got our ducks in a row. We're putting the record out with Black Doomba Records, with Tommy Stewart's Black Doomba Records, who is also an angel of a guy. And actually, Scott from Salt of the Earth Records introduced us, which, like, such a selfless, beautiful thing for a good
Yep.
friend to do. He was like, I don't think I can put out your record. I have a lot of stuff I'm working on right now, but let me find somebody who will put out your record for you. That's a friend.
Yes, it is.
That's a brother. He called Tommy, had a conversation with him. He's like, I think you're really going to love this record. Then I did a Zoom call with Tommy because he's in Atlanta. I'm in Philadelphia.
Okay.
I did a Zoom call with Tommy, and he's like, yeah, dude, you seem solid. Let me hear the record. I sent him the record, and he was like, okay, I need to put out this record. I was wondering what I was going to do for the rest of the year, but it looks like it's this, you know? And I'm like, you like it? He's like, I don't know why anyone wouldn't like this record.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, damn, thank you. And he's like, if you don't like this record, I guess you don't like nice things.
Yeah.
Like, I guess you just go down to the park and kick ducks or something, I think, which is one of my favorite things I've ever heard.
Yeah.
So, but for this record, we did, I don't know if you've seen it, but we did a video for Last Laugh.
No, I'm not a big video dude.
Yeah, I never was before. I've never been in a video before. I've never done like a real pro shot. I've been in videos, you know what I mean? But like it's mostly like live performance stuff.
Yeah.
And I've never done it before. So Tommy's like, yeah, whatever kind of videos you want to do, but you got to do at least two. I was like, bet we'll do two videos. So for the first one for Last Laugh, I was like, you know what? Let's just go in. Let's do it. So we got a videographer. We went to his big warehouse space, and there's a set. I know you just said you're not a big video guy, but I would encourage you to watch it because it's a lot of our personalities in it, and you'll see
Okay.
what I mean when you watch it if you watch it. So there's that, and also it's a real video. It looks like something you would have seen on MTV in the '90s, maybe. Um, so we made a video, and then we have our second video coming out. It's not a performance-based video. It's a visualizer, I guess you'd call it, that Mikey edited. He also edited the first video. He's, like I said, quite brilliant at editing. Um, and yeah, it was, that was a lot of work, but we've got a good PR team.
Yeah.
We've got a good label with a very dedicated label owner, president, Tommy, who's just, first of all, he and his wife Laura are lovely people. First and foremost, they're nice, nice people. I was friends with his wife actually on Facebook because she just seemed like a nice lady, and I met her at Doomfest. And she's always just kind of like sharing recipes and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
and she loves her husband, and he loves her. And there's not enough of that you get to see every day.
That's
You
awesome.
know, yeah, yeah. So I mean, that is kind of our overarching thing. I think people who meet us and know us find out, one, that the guy with the dreadlocks never stops talking. That's number one. Number two, we're silly, and number three, we are all about togetherness, love, and embracing each other.
Sure.
That's our vibe. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a hugger. You know, people know if you don't want to get hugged, don't fucking come near me.
That's
Like,
okay.
if
That's how my family is, so I'm used to it.
yeah, well, you're Italian, right?
Of course.
Well, I saw your last name.
It's the only thing it could be with a last name like that, right?
You'd be surprised. I have some good friends in upstate New York, in Buffalo. Their last name, they were in the husband Troy. They're wonderful people. Troy and Kim are just the nicest people. And Troy was in a band called Sons of Ghidorah, right? Their last name is Mezzio, Mezzio.
Okay.
You think Paisan, right?
Right. French.
Nah,
Maybe.
Brits, British.
Oh. Oh,
Somewhere back in their woodpile, there's some Italians that gave them the name, but
yeah.
they're, I'm like, we went up to play with them in Buffalo, and I'm like, Troy, I expect you to find us some good pizza. And he's like, why is that? I'm like, your last name ends in a vowel, bro. Let's do some, let's do some, let's get some pizza. And he's
Yeah.
like, I actually am not Italian. I'm like, what? I thought that was the reason we got along
Well, I tell you
because
what, though, if you bring Thunderbird Divine to Pittsburgh, I'll definitely give you some good pizzas.
oh, hell yeah. We're looking to play in, we were just out near Pittsburgh the other weekend.
Okay.
We were out in Kane, PA.
I'm not
It's
sure what
close
that
to
is.
Erie. It's close to
Okay.
Erie. When you're in Kane, you're 2 hours from Toronto.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's out that direction. We were not far from you. It's like, what is it? Route 81? No, 80. 80 goes across
Yeah,
PA.
80's up top of the state. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it goes across PA and then you have to go further north from there.
Yeah.
It's out there.
Yep.
It's like 5 hours from Philly. So,
Okay.
and but yeah, we played in Pittsburgh and we play in Harrisburg fairly regularly, but Pittsburgh we played before Descendants of Crom.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Supposed to go last year, but then I had a car accident like right before it, so I ended up not being able to make it. But
understood.
hopefully
Understood.
this year I'll be there.
Yeah, Shy is Shy's got a new band now, Funeral.
I'll be honest, I'm not really too familiar with a lot of the Pittsburgh metal guys. There's only a
Oh,
few. I just started
oh,
this whole thing about 6 months ago. And so I'm
oh,
like
okay.
slowly getting into this. I wouldn't say slowly, but I'm growing pretty quickly and I'm getting into the scene and,
Right.
a lot of great people.
You
Elf.
should get to know Shy Kennedy.
Okay.
Shy, her name is SHY Kennedy, like the Kennedys.
Okay.
Um, and she was in a band called Whorehound,
Oh,
HOREHOU.
I just watched back in February. I went to see Temple of the Fuzzwitch, and there was a
Did
band
they
called
open?
Yeah, well, Temple of the Fuzzwitch opened for Whorehound, and there was another band called Lost Prophets that we met that night too. Another great
Hmm.
band that we still maintain in contact. I think Whorehound just broke up though and reformed
Yeah,
in something
Funeral.
else. Yeah, Funeral.
Yeah,
That's right. That's right.
yeah. So definitely reach out to Shy. She's awesome. She puts together Descendants of Crom, uh, and she does her band, and she's like really low key, like she's a
Okay.
mellow person, but she's a dynamo, man. She gets shit done.
Yeah.
And she can put you in touch with a lot of people. So I highly recommend. You can tell her I said so.
Okay, I will.
Um, I mean, we don't like we're not best buds or anything, but I got a lot of respect for that lady, and she's on top of things. Like if something goes through Pittsburgh, she's on it.
Okay.
So anyway, side note. Here I am talking about people I know and people I like in the business. I should be like fully egotistical right now and just talking about myself, but
Hey, that's okay. If you don't get it all in today, we just reschedule another one and do another one.
I'm down.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So what were we talking about?
About your killer album that you're putting out.
Okay, yeah, Little Wars. I'm massively proud of it. We worked very, very hard. Um, and back to your original question about why this record might be thicker, heavier.
Yeah.
Um, we did record differently this time than we have in the past.
Okay.
Um, being that our bass player Josh, who's a brilliant bass player
Okay.
and a songwriter and arranger, he has a recording studio at his home.
That's great.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and he's very adept in using the programs and editing and all that stuff. The only thing we couldn't record at his place was drums, so we went to the same place where we recorded Hand of Man, Retro City. We recorded drums there, but everything else was recorded. Well, no, there were a couple of keyboard things that were recorded at Retro City, but aside from drums and a few keyboard things, that was the rest of it was all recorded at Josh's place. And so the process was a lot different for us.
Sure.
When I tell you that we've recorded some of these songs 3 times, that's not bullshit. Like, we did room recordings, and then Josh and I went and recorded everything to a click track, the guitar and bass and some vocals to a click
Sure.
track. Then we demoed the drums in our rehearsal space. So we had like a full working proof of concept
Okay.
demo of. So we're like, okay, so now I hear the whole song, and what are we going to do with this transition, et cetera, et cetera, you know?
Yeah.
So we did that. So we had full, like, there's a whole demo version of this entire record. That sounds very similar to the final version that's being released, but it's a demo. You know, that's when we figured out tempos. That's
Yeah.
when we figured out, like, you know, what kind of overdubs are we going to do? You know, what kind of layers are we putting on there? So the demos we really threw a lot at, and did a very sort of rudimentary mix on those, just like I said, proof of concept, right?
Sure. Sure.
Um, and then we had those demos that had the tempos right. And then we took those demos, which are structured exactly like the final songs, and took them to the recording studio at Retro City with Joe Baldazar and our boy Jake, and tracked, you know, drums in their beautiful space. We got, you know, our drummer Mikey was in his element. He got to use I mean, they have, like, I don't know, a bunch of different drum sets, and they were like, "What do you want to use?" And he was like, kid in a candy store, you know, like,
Sure.
ooh, you know, which one am I going to use? And I think he settled on like a '70s Ludwig set, and Joe brought out this enormous brass snare drum, and he was like, "You want to use this?" And Mike was like, "I absolutely do. Yes, thank
Yeah.
you very much." And so we tracked all the drums there, and they also had a B3 and a Farfisa organ, which our keyboard player Jack was like salivating, and I was like, "Well, if you know the parts and you can track them here, let's go," you know.
Yeah.
And he sat down behind the B3. First time he ever played a real B3.
I
Which
don't even know what a B3 is.
a B3 is like a Hammond organ. It's like what the Almonds use. It's like,
Okay.
you know,
Okay.
it's like whiter shade of pale, right?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Now, a Farfisa is kind of like what you would have heard. What the hell's that song? Question mark and the Mysterians. Do you know, like,
Okay.
that old
Yeah. Yeah.
96 tears? You know that it's kind of twee. It's kind of,
Yeah.
you know, corny sounding, but they have that texture that's, you know, not replaceable. And so Jack knew all the parts that he wanted to do on Farfisa and on B3 Hammond organ. And that's a different animal, let me tell you. When you sit down behind a Hammond organ, like a real B3, when you sit down behind one, that, you know, it's like a big piece of furniture, like they were made for churches and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So it's a big piece of wooden furniture, and it uses a Leslie speaker, which is a spinning speaker,
Okay.
which gives like an old school kind of like swirl to stuff. It goes like
Okay. Almost like
like
a
that kind
delay
of.
effect.
It's what the initial chorus was supposed to be, like when you use the
Okay.
guitar sound,
Sure. Sure.
chorus sound for a guitar. And there are things that Jack plays a keyboard that's much like a B3,
Okay.
but it's not, like I said, a real B3 is literally a piece of furniture. It weighs hundreds of pounds. It's a pain in the ass to move around. This is a keyboard that sort of simulates it, and it has that same, like, you can do the same Leslie effect on it.
Okay.
But when, you know, something simulating versus doing the actual thing,
Sure.
you know, is it's different, you know.
And you
It's
probably
like,
get a much bigger sound from that, like a much bigger, richer sound from just the
it's
whole furniture.
yes. Now, I will say this, that a lot of modern technology has simulated things like a B3 to the point where it's very, very difficult to hear the difference
Okay.
between a real B3 and a Hammond, like an sim. But I will say this, um, there's a texture to the real thing that can't completely be duplicated.
Sure.
It's an X factor. And maybe it's just me being like, turned on because my boy was sitting in front of this awesome keyboard, organ, and he was like, full of joy playing this great piece of equipment that he's heard of and seen on pictures but never put his hands on.
Sure.
So I was so happy for him to get to use something he's always wanted to experience, and he got to put it on a record. Like I was just like, yeah, great, Jack. And so maybe part of it is that influence is like, hit me in the heart and making me happy that he got to use it. And maybe that's what I hear,
Sure.
exuberance of a guy playing a thing that's, a dream to play. And like very few people have one that works well, and they own it. Um, so all of those things were recorded at Retro City, and then we took it back to Josh's house where I cut the guitars and I cut vocals, and then all the other weird shit that's on there, like the kalimba and um, all of the weird shit. There's electric sitar in there. There's a bunch of acoustics. There's all kinds of synths. All kinds of noise machines are in there.
So this leads me, like, I've been wanting to ask,
Yeah,
how do you put so many different sounds and effects, more so sounds, without oversaturating or overdoing it? Like, I think one of the strengths of your band, a lot of bands, whether it's anything from a simple effect like a chorus or a delay, a flanger, they just throw so much of it in there that sometimes it becomes too much and it's almost overbearing. But yours, it seems that like you put in hundreds, it seems, sounds, but it all balances out really well and it flows and it's very cohesive throughout the entire song. Like it's not segmented. Sometimes you can hear when the tempo shift or the writing shifts, you can hear the segmented portions of the song, but it's almost like your whole entire album just flows. It's great.
wow. Well, that is, first of all, that's very kind thing to say. And second of all, I would say that that is definitely calculated.
Sure.
Um, so a lot of the time it was when it came to like doing all the weird layering and stuff, it was Josh and I sitting at his house, like staring at a screen like I'm staring at you right now
Yeah.
for hours. And like, trying stuff. You know what I mean? And then
Yeah.
trusting ourselves that like this is it or this is not it.
Yeah.
You know. So um there's stuff that never made the final mix that we tried. That was like, oh, this is it. This is going to be the thing. This is it. This is the shit. This is so good. And
Yeah.
then like, but you get like, that thing where you're so focused on trying to get, a sound that the next day you go back and listen, like, no, that wasn't it. No, that's not it at all.
Yeah.
Um, and that's sort of like we had to trust our instincts. It's like, and we would argue, and I'd be like, he'd be like super into something that was on that we had recorded. I'm like, that ain't it. No, no. Like, I don't. There was one of the songs. Josh wanted to put a layer of like people talking under their breath, sort of like not an argument, but just kind of
Yeah.
it sound like people are losing their mind, right?
Yeah.
And he laid that underneath the song, as like a quiet thing that you could hear sort of going on in the background. I was like, I think it's distracting. I don't think it's working. Like, I don't like it. I think it's too much. You know what I mean? It's not hitting it's taking away from the song rather than adding to the song, right?
Sure. Sure. Sure.
It's taking me away from the experience, right? And if it meant something to him, we'd fight about it. Like not
I get it.
but
Yeah.
like we would argue about it, and um I'd be like, uh, I'll tell you what, let's leave it in for now and finish doing other stuff, and then we'll fool with it, you know? And some of the stuff happened, some of the stuff stayed on the tracks until we mixed. And then I was like, well, that's when we had to like make decisions, you know, and be like, um, and to to the point of that particular thing where there's like slight quiet talking in the background.
Sure.
I believe it's still in there, but it's very, very low. It's like a subliminal, right?
Okay.
There are other things that we tried to put on songs. Like I got this weird pedal that makes like bizarre noises. It's called a rainbow machine. It's a weird,
Okay.
weird fucking pedal. Okay. It does a lot of weird shit. And I was like, yeah, let's see, you know, let's see what this does. Let's find a,
Okay.
you know, let's see if we can get a sound going with one of these songs with it. And I thought I found something that was pretty cool. And we put it on the song, and it was there until we mixed. And I'm like, you know, let's get that weird elephant fucking thing out of here. It sounds like an elephant going, you know. And
Yeah.
I was like, that's like, that ain't it. Like, that's not the thing. Let's get that out of here. So we got rid of it in the final mix, and I think it's probably better. Like, so to answer your question, it's a matter of trying things, right? Seeing what's possible and plausible, and
Okay.
then deciding whether or not it fits. Because ultimately, when you finish, what are we putting out here? A record of sound effects? No, we're putting out a record of songs,
Sure.
right? So ultimately, the song is what matters,
Sure.
right? The song is the bottom line. And so if it's not making the song better, it doesn't belong in there.
That's an awesome way to
You know,
say it.
thank you. I mean, when for us when we go in to record, it's like you want to you know who Nile Rodgers is?
Not offhand.
Okay, he's the guitar player, was in the band Chic. You know,
Okay.
freak out,
Yep.
did it. He's produced tons of records,
Okay.
tons. Madonna, he did the early Madonna stuff. He
Okay.
did David Bowie's Let's Dance album.
Strong album there.
I mean, Duran Duran, like just a Power Station, and he was in Chic, by the way, who had a bazillion hits in the 70s.
Yeah.
Um, Nile Rodgers is a brilliant producer, and part of the reason he's so brilliant is that he always looked for what he called the DHM, deeper hidden meaning.
Okay.
What's the deeper hidden meaning in this song? Once you find that, you pursue it, right?
Okay.
So, you know, for example, last laugh is like angry, right? It's aggressive. Now I'm not saying like I'm like, oh, fuck you in the
Yeah,
song,
yeah, yeah. But
but
it's definitely
it's
heavier, really
it
heavier.
yeah, it's a heavy song,
Yeah.
and it's supposed to be, because the subject matter is what it is. You know what I
Heavier.
mean?
Makes
You
sense.
know, I wouldn't have written those lyrics to it if I didn't feel that way. You know what I mean? Um,
But in the not to interrupt, but
no, no, go ahead.
in the same sense, the heaviness, and I'm learning a lot about the more I'm getting into like dissecting music itself, like each piece of the song. I'm finding, especially in the two releases, the two singles you put out, and Last Laugh is a great point of it. It starts so thick and heavy, but by the end of the song, it's really elevated and really, it's almost like a rocket ship, and you're heavy and grounded. And as you're building the rise, eventually you break out of the atmosphere, and you're at like a cruising altitude out in space. Space works really well with your albums, and
Yeah.
the same sense is like if you have all these extra effects, it to me would sound like pieces of the machine falling off or pieces of the
Mm,
rocket falling off, just endless noise. And a lot of bands overdo that. But when you guys
sure.
get to that like cruising altitude, it's just the heaviness and the balance of the height that you can take it really is a nice contrast, and it really adds like tension to the song. Really great songwriting you guys have, I think.
Thank you. I mean, it was a lot of work. You know, like I said, it's that song's been around for a while, and it's gone through different iterations. Like, um, initially when we wrote it, I didn't have words in that bridge part.
Yeah.
You know, the after that sort of, I didn't have the, see the finger that you're pointing at me, there's pointing back at you. It's 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
I didn't have words there, but I initially, and then the more I listened to it, I was like, I got to say something to like make sense, some more sense here. So, at that point, I'm saying, you're pointing at me, you're pointing back at yourself. I'm pointing at you, I'm pointing back at myself. So it's sort of like explains sort of the pointlessness of arguing with your friends, right?
Yeah.
Like you're wrong, I'm wrong, we're both wrong, we're just mad.
Yeah.
You know, and so the overarching thing is, the lyrics of that song are about a friend of mine I was very, very close with for many years. And I loved him dearly. We had a fight actually around the making of Magnasonic. We had a disagreement about the mix, believe it or not, of that record. And we stopped speaking.
Yeah.
There was a lot of acrimony and animosity between us because he thought I was taking away all of the stuff that he'd, helped us with. He's like, it's not, doesn't represent my work anymore. And I'm like, it isn't your work. It's my fucking work, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And we didn't speak. We didn't speak. And then he died like a year and a half later. And we never mended fences. We never kissed and made up, as they say.
Sure.
We never got out of our own fucking way to put one bullshit thing, throw that out, and just remember that we love each other and we're brothers. And it's a record, fucking, you know what I mean? Like, chill.
Yeah.
And it's a great regret of mine that I never was able to mend that fence with my good friend. And now he's just gone. And so that song is really about, when the fat lady sings, nobody wins, right?
Right.
Like you
Yeah.
argue with your buddy about something fucking stupid. Okay, but get over it.
Yeah.
Because when it's all done, who lost and who won? Does it matter? No.
It's oddly enough you say that. I've been going through for about a better part of a decade, like a struggle,
Mhm.
and it's been a fight.
Mhm.
And I'm fighting an enemy, not a friend. But in the end, like
Mhm.
the longer that this goes on, and when Last Laugh played and I heard those part, you start realizing like how much did you lose to gain a win? Like I theoretically you won or you win the championship or the trophy or whatever, but how much did you lose in the process of winning? Was it all worth it? But I think the strong point is that you were strong enough to or wise enough to realize so in the future you're able to, move on and progress from that and, you
Yeah.
know, hopefully teach others.
Unfortunately, not soon enough.
Sure.
But um, that's called learning a lesson. I wish I didn't have to lose a friend like that to learn that lesson. You know, some lessons, cost you a friendship. Some lessons cost you money.
Sure.
Some lessons cost you time. And some lessons are just lessons that you learn. They don't cost you anything. You just learn pain, physical pain sometimes. Like,
Sure.
oh, I won't touch that hot stove again, Um, but
Just to let you know, we have less than a minute left.
yeah,
If this just cuts off randomly, like the last interview, I
yeah,
thank you so much for today. I had such a blast talking to you.
same, absolutely the same.
And I think
Um,
we should do this again. I really enjoyed this.
Same here. I agree. You clearly listened to the record and you clearly got it, and that means so very much to me and the boys because music's very personal, and if you're getting it, once you put it out in the world, it doesn't belong to you anymore, right? It belongs to
Sure.
whoever's listening to it.